detecting moons outside of our solar system, but we're noticing these moons are always tiny relative to the mass of the planet. Our moon is more than 50 times bigger than any other known moon relative to the mass of its host planet. For example, our moon comes in at about 1.5% the mass of our planet, whereas what's typical is something like 0.01%. And that's because our moon formed like no other moon. Our solar system began with 5 rocky planets. There was Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, and the planet Theia. Well, what happened early in the solar system's history, Theia and the Earth collided with one another, which caused the Earth to become more massive, but also create a debris cloud around the Earth that coalesced to form the moon. It explains why we have a relatively small planet orbited by a gigantic moon. But during the first 560 million years of the existence of our solar system, what we notice is that our sun was pouring out intense particle radiation, gamma ray radiation, X-ray radiation, and flaring activity that's 100,000 times greater than what is happening today. That takes you up to that little green dotted line. And the radiation coming out from the sun was so intense that it would have sputtered away all of Earth's water and all of Earth's atmosphere. What prevented that from happening was that the Earth at that time had a very strong magnetosphere, much stronger than we have today. However, as scientists studied this, they realized there's no way the Earth could have had that strong enough of a magnetosphere by itself. And they realized the answer was the moon. Now, this is how far apart the Earth and the moon are right now. But this is how far apart the Earth and the moon were 4 billion years ago. And because we need to advance the slides, thank you for reminding me of that. That's the Earth and the moon right now, and this is where they were 4 billion years ago. And because the moon and the Earth came about as a result of this collision, Earth began with a very hot core, and the moon began with a very hot core. Both of them had a hot liquid iron core. And because of how close together the Earth and moon were, the tidal interaction between the Earth and the moon was sufficient to circulate the liquid iron in both the core of the moon and the core of the Earth. So both bodies had a magnetosphere, a strong magnetic field that generated a magnetosphere. And because of how close together they were, the magnetosphere coupled. And it was that coupled magnetosphere that prevented the particle radiation from the sun sputtering away all of our water and all of our atmosphere. And the authors of the research paper concluded their paper by saying, this is a habitability requirement. It is the most profound habitability requirement. The only way you can have life on a planet is if you have 2 planets colliding with one another, just like Theia and the Earth collided, where you get the formation of the moon, where both of them have a hot interior core, and the moon begins to spiral away from that planet, just like the moon spirals away from the Earth. If it doesn't have all those features, there's no way that you're going to retain water and atmosphere on the planet. And years ago, when people were working on the planet formation model, they said, we got way too much design here. We need to redo the models in order to eliminate all this amazing design we're seeing here. They redid the models and they came up with even more design. This is all published in the British journal Nature, and Tim Elliott wrote an article saying, all this extra fine-tuning is causing us philosophical disquiet. Well, now that this philosophical disquiet has raised exponentially, and explains too why we see the history of life that we do on planet Earth, where for the first 560 million years there is no life. The solar radiation would have made that impossible. Microbes are much more tolerant to solar radiation, and explains why for the first 3 billion years of life history, all we have is microbes. The sun has to quiet down enough to make possible plants and animals, And then there's only a 100,000-year wide window where the sun's radiation is quiet enough where we human beings can exist. And then we astronomers have been scouring our galaxy trying to find a star that's luminosity stability is like the sun. Well, the top figure here basically shows you the luminosity stability of the sun. What you see at the bottom is a star out of the millions and tens of millions we've looked at that places second. Our star, the sun, is 5 times more stable in its luminosity stability than the second best star we've been able to find. And if that weren't the case, none of you would be able to sit here together this morning. Again, as you walk out, do pick up our book, Always Be Ready. It's free. And remember nothing else from my talk today. I know I was a little technical here. Just remember this, a principle in Job and Psalms. The more we learn about nature, the more evidence we gain for the supernatural handiwork of God that makes possible the redemption of billions of human beings from their sin and evil. Thank you.